I stood in the middle of the restaurant's private dining room with my left eye swollen completely shut. The purple and black bruise spread across half my face like spilled ink. Mascara ran down my cheeks in dark rivers. 50 people stared at me in complete silence, their champagne glasses frozen halfway to their lips, their faces twisted in shock and horror. My husband Brandon stood right beside me with his arm draped around my shoulders like we were posing for a happy anniversary photo. He was smiling, actually smiling, like there was nothing wrong with the way I looked, like bringing your beaten wife to your anniversary dinner was perfectly normal. His sisters Veronica and Candace stood behind us, barely containing their laughter. They kept glancing at each other and giggling into their champagne glasses, their eyes sparkling with cruel pride. But I'm getting ahead of myself. Let me go back 3 days, back to when I still thought I could make this anniversary perfect. Back when I still believed that if I just tried hard enough, if I was just good enough, everything would be okay. 3 days before our 10th anniversary, I was in our huge kitchen planning every tiny detail of the celebration dinner. I had spreadsheets. Actual spreadsheets for seating arrangements, menu choices, decorations. I wanted everything to be flawless because lately, Brandon had been so on edge about everything I did. He'd started checking my phone when I was in the shower. He'd criticized my clothes before I left the house, making me change 3 or 4 times until he approved. He'd gotten angry when I mentioned having coffee with an old friend from work, saying I was trying to embarrass him by gossiping about our marriage. So I cancelled the coffee date. Then I just stopped mentioning friends at all. His sisters visited our house at least 3 times a week now. They'd walk through my kitchen like they owned it, opening my refrigerator and making comments about everything. Grace, are you really serving this for dinner? Brandon deserves better. Or, Grace, this house is dusty. Don't you clean? Or my personal favourite, Grace, you've gotten so thin. Are you trying to make our brother look bad by looking sick? I tried so hard to please them. I really did. But nothing was ever good enough. 2 nights before the anniversary, Brandon's whole family came over for dinner. I'd spent all day cooking Brandon's favourite meal, cleaning the house until it sparkled, setting the table with our fancy dishes. I wore the dress Brandon had approved that morning and made sure my hair and makeup were perfect. Everything was going smoothly until I was pouring wine. My hand was shaking because Veronica had just made another comment about how the chicken was dry. As I poured her glass, some wine splashed onto her dress. Not even that much, just a few drops. But you would have thought I'd thrown the entire bottle at her. Veronica jumped up from the table screaming like I'd stabbed her. This dress cost $3,000. Grace, you stupid, clumsy idiot. She was yelling so loud that I just froze, the wine bottle still in my hand, watching the small red stain spread on her white dress. I immediately started apologizing, grabbing napkins, offering to pay for the cleaning or buy her a new dress. But Brandon didn't defend me. He didn't tell his sister to calm down or that it was an accident. Instead, he looked at me with cold disappointment and said, Grace, you're so careless. Can't you do anything right? His words hurt more than Veronica's screaming. I felt tears burning in my eyes, but I blinked them back. Crying would only make things worse. So I cleaned up, apologized over and over, and spent the rest of dinner in silence while everyone else talked and laughed like nothing had happened. That night, Brandon slept in the guest room. He didn't say goodnight. He didn't explain. He just took his pillow and left me alone in our bed. And I knew it was my punishment for embarrassing him. The next day, the day before our anniversary, I was trying to make things right. I went shopping for a new dress for the anniversary dinner since Brandon hadn't liked any of the ones I already owned. When I got home, Candace was in my living room waiting for me. Brandon had given her a key months ago without asking me. She watched me carry in my shopping bags with this nasty smile on her face. New dress? Trying to impress people? You know everyone just feels sorry for Brandon, right? Being married to someone like you. I tried to ignore her and went upstairs to hang up my dress. It was beautiful, dark blue with delicate beading. It had cost more than I wanted to spend, but I thought Brandon would like it. I laid it carefully on the bed and went to use the bathroom. When I came back 5 minutes later, my dress had a huge bleach stain down the front. The blue fabric was spotted with white blotches, completely ruined. Candace was standing next to it with a bottle of cleaning spray in her hand, her eyes wide with fake innocence. "Oops," she said. "I was trying to help clean your room and accidentally sprayed your dress." My bad. I felt something break inside me. I'd spent $200 on that dress. Money I'd saved from my small teaching salary, and she'd destroyed it on purpose. I could see it in her eyes, in that little smirk she was trying to hide. "Why would you do that?" I asked, my voice shaking. "Why do you hate me so much?" Candace's fake innocent expression dropped immediately. "Because you're not good enough for this family. You're weak and pathetic, and you make my brother look bad. You need to learn your place, Grace." When Brandon came home and I tried to tell him what happened, showing him the ruined dress, he just sighed like I was exhausting him. "Grace, you're being too sensitive. Candace said it was an accident. Why do you always have to cause drama with my family? You need to learn to get along with them." I wanted to scream that they were the ones causing drama, that they bullied me in my own home. But I didn't. I just nodded and apologized for being upset. That's what I always did. Apologize, stay quiet, try harder. The morning of our anniversary, I woke up with this heavy feeling in my chest. Brandon was already downstairs and I could hear Veronica's and Candace's voices. They were here early. That was never a good sign. I got ready carefully, wearing an older dress since my new one was ruined. I did my makeup perfectly, styled my hair the way Brandon liked. When I looked in the mirror, I barely recognized myself. I'd lost so much weight over the past year. My cheeks were hollow, my eyes looked tired no matter how much sleep I got. I looked like a ghost of the woman I used to be. My phone rang. It was Natalie, my twin sister. We used to talk every day, but Brandon had made that difficult. He'd get upset whenever I was on the phone with her, saying she put negative ideas in my head. So our calls had become shorter and less frequent. I answered quickly. "Hey, Nat. Happy anniversary, Gracie." Her voice was so warm and full of life. For a second, I wanted to tell her everything, about the wine incident, the dress, the cold silence, how scared I felt in my own home. But then, I heard Brandon calling my name from downstairs, his tone sharp and impatient. "Thanks, Nat. I have to go. We'll talk later, okay?" "Grace." "Wait." I hung up before she could finish. I took one last look at myself in the mirror, practiced my smile, and headed downstairs. I had no idea that in a few hours, everything would explode in a way I never could have imagined. When I reached the bottom of the stairs, Brandon was pacing back and forth in our living room like a caged animal. Veronica sat on my couch with her legs crossed, examining her perfectly manicured nails. Candace stood by the window, arms folded across her chest. All three of them turned to look at me when I entered, and the energy in the room felt dangerous. "You were on the phone," Brandon said. It wasn't a question. It was an accusation. My heart started beating faster. "It was just Natalie calling to wish us happy anniversary." "Just Natalie," he repeated, his voice dripping with sarcasm. "You mean the sister who's been trying to break us up for 10 years? The one who fills your head with lies about me?" She wasn't saying anything bad. She was just being nice. I could hear how weak my voice sounded, how apologetic, even though I hadn't done anything wrong. Brandon pulled out his phone and held it up. I felt my stomach drop. He'd been checking my phone records again. "You talked to her 3 times this week. 3 times, Grace. What are you telling her about our private family business?" "Nothing. I swear, we just talk about normal things. Her job. My work. Nothing about you or your family." That was partially true. Natalie had been asking if I was okay, saying I sounded stressed, but I'd changed the subject every time. Veronica stood up from the couch. "She's lying, Brandon. I can always tell when she's lying. She gets this look in her eyes." "What look?" I turned to face her. I'm not lying about anything. Don't raise your voice at my sister, Brandon snapped, moving closer to me. See, this is exactly what I'm talking about. You're getting defensive and disrespectful. Ever since that wine incident 2 nights ago, you've had this attitude. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. I don't have an attitude. I apologized 100 times for the wine. I offered to pay for Veronica's dress. What more do you want from me? Candace laughed from across the room. It was a cold, mean sound. What we want is for you to understand that you're part of this family now, and that means showing proper respect. You embarrassed us in front of our parents? You ruined an expensive dress. And you don't seem sorry at all. I am sorry. My voice was getting louder, and I hated how desperate I sounded. I've been apologizing for 2 days. I didn't mean to spill the wine. It was an accident. Brandon was right in front of me now, his face inches from mine. Lower your voice when you speak to my sisters. They've been patient with you for 10 years, Grace. 10 years of your mistakes and your failures as a wife. And how do you repay them? By talking behind our backs to your sister, by making scenes at family dinners, by being ungrateful for everything this family has given you. Tears were starting to blur my vision, but I blinked them back. I'm not ungrateful. I've tried so hard to be a good wife to make everyone happy. You've tried? Veronica interrupted, stepping closer. You've tried? Grace, trying isn't good enough. We don't want effort. We want results. We want you to actually be worthy of being part of this family. I looked at Brandon, waiting for him to tell his sister she was being too harsh, waiting for him to defend me, to tell them to back off. But he just stood there with his arms crossed, nodding along with every cruel word she said. Brandon, please, I whispered. It's our anniversary. Can we not do this today? Can we just try to have a nice dinner? His eyes went cold in a way that made my whole body tense. That's your problem, Grace. You always want to sweep things under the rug. You never want to deal with the real issues. Well, today we're dealing with them, because you need to learn your place in this family. My place? I repeated. What does that even mean? Candace moved to stand beside her sister, both of them now forming a wall between me and the door. It means you're not equal to us. You married into this family, but you didn't earn your spot. You're like a guest who's overstayed their welcome. Something inside me snapped. Maybe it was 10 years of biting my tongue. Maybe it was the exhaustion of trying to be perfect every single day. Maybe it was the way they were all looking at me like I was nothing. I'm his wife. We've been married for 10 years. I've done everything you've asked. I've changed who I am to fit into this family. What more do you want? The silence that followed my outburst was terrifying. Brandon's jaw clenched. Veronica's eyes narrowed. Candace smiled like I'd just walked into a trap. There it is, Brandon said quietly. Your real feelings finally coming out. You think you've sacrificed so much. You think we should be grateful to you. That's not what I meant. Shut up. His voice was so sharp that I actually flinched. I'm tired of your excuses, I'm tired of your victim act, and I'm especially tired of you embarrassing me and my sisters. Veronica turned to Brandon with this awful gleam in her eye. You know what, brother? I think Grace needs a lesson she won't forget. She needs to understand that actions have consequences. My heart started pounding. Something about the way she said it, the way Brandon's expression shifted, made every alarm bell in my head start ringing. What are you talking about? Brandon looked at his sisters, then back at me. They're right. You've been coddled for too long. Every time you mess up, I just let it go. Well, not anymore. Veronica, Candace, I think it's time you taught my wife some respect. Brandon, what does that mean? I could hear the fear in my own voice. You're scaring me. Good, he said simply. Maybe if you were scared more often, you'd behave better. Veronica stepped forward and I automatically stepped back. This is going to hurt us more than it hurts you, Grace. But it's for your own good. Before I could react, Before I could even process what was happening, Veronica's hand flew across my face. The slap was so hard that my head snapped to the side. Pain exploded across my cheek. My ear was ringing. I stumbled backward in shock, my hand flying up to touch my burning face. "What?" I started to say, but Candace was already moving. She shoved me hard with both hands. I wasn't ready for it. My feet tangled together as I tried to catch my balance. I fell backward, and the sharp corner of our coffee table rushed up to meet my face. The impact sent white-hot pain shooting through my skull. I hit the floor hard, my vision going blurry. I could feel something wet and warm running down from my eyebrow. Blood. I touched my face and my fingers came away red. I looked up from the floor, my eye already starting to swell, blood trickling down my face. Brandon was standing above me with his arms crossed. He didn't look angry anymore. He looked satisfied. "Maybe now," he said calmly, "you'll remember to show my family the respect they deserve." Veronica and Candace were straightening their clothes, fixing their hair like they'd just finished a workout instead of attacking someone. Candace checked her reflection in the mirror above our fireplace and smiled at what she saw. "Clean yourself up," Veronica said, not even looking at me on the floor. "We have an anniversary dinner to attend in 2 hours. And Grace, if you tell anyone what really happened here, Brandon will make sure everyone knows what a clumsy, lying wife you are. Won't you, Brandon?" "Absolutely," he agreed. "Now get upstairs and make yourself presentable. And if you embarrass this family tonight, what just happened will seem gentle. Understood?" I couldn't speak. I couldn't move. I just lay there on the floor of my own living room, blood running down my face, staring up at the man I'd married 10 years ago. The man I thought I knew. The man I'd loved. He wasn't that person anymore. Or maybe he never had been. I said, "Understood." Brandon's voice got harder. "Yes," I whispered. "Good, now go." I somehow got to my feet. My legs shaking so badly I could barely stand. I walked past all 3 of them, not looking at any of their faces, and made my way upstairs to the bathroom. Behind me, I could hear them laughing about something, their voices light and casual like nothing had just happened. I locked the bathroom door and finally looked at myself in the mirror. My left eye was already swelling, the skin around it turning dark purple. Blood was still coming from the cut above my eyebrow. My cheek was bright red from the slap, already starting to bruise. I looked like someone who'd been beaten. Because I had been. My phone was in my pocket. It buzzed. Another call from Natalie. My hands were shaking so hard I almost dropped it. I stared at her name on the screen, my twin sister, my best friend, the person I'd been lying to for months about how bad things had gotten. This time I answered. "Nat," I whispered, my voice breaking. "I need you. Come now." "I'm coming right now. Don't hang up. Stay on the phone with me." Natalie's voice was sharp and focused, but I could hear the panic underneath. "Grace, tell me exactly what happened." I couldn't stop crying. The words came out in broken pieces. Brandon's sisters. They hit me. Veronica slapped me and Candace pushed me and I fell into the coffee table. My eye. Nat, it's so bad. There's blood and it's swelling and Brandon just stood there and watched them do it. He told them to teach me respect. I heard something crash on Natalie's end, like she'd knocked something over. "I'm getting in my car right now. I'm 4 hours away, but I'll make it in 3. Grace, listen to me. You need to leave that house right now. Get out. Go to a neighbor. Go anywhere." "I can't." I was looking at my destroyed face in the mirror, dabbing at the blood with a towel. "He said, if I don't show up to the anniversary dinner, if I embarrass him, it'll be worse. He said he'll tell everyone I'm crazy and lying. And Nat? I believe him. You should see the way he looked at me, like I'm not even human to him anymore. Grace, please. There are 50 people coming to this dinner. His whole family, his business partners, mom and dad. If I don't show up, he'll have some story ready. He always does. But if I go..." My voice dropped to a whisper, even though the bathroom door was locked. "If I go and everyone sees what they did to me, they can't lie about it." Natalie was quiet for a moment. I could hear her car starting. The sound of her pulling out of wherever she was. Okay, okay, here's what we're going to do. You go to that dinner. You don't hide what they did. Let everyone see your face. I'm going to drive as fast as I can, and I'll be there before dessert. Can you hold on until then? I'm so scared, I whispered. The swelling around my eye was getting worse. I could barely see out of it anymore. I know, Gracie, I know you are. But you're stronger than you think. You've survived 10 years with that monster. You can survive 2 more hours. And when I get there, we're ending this. All of it. Tonight. There was something in Natalie's voice that made me believe her. Something fierce and protective that I'd been missing for so long. What are you going to do? Whatever I have to do to protect my sister. Now put me on speaker and start covering that bruise as best you can. Not to hide it completely, but so Brandon thinks you're trying to cooperate. I'll stay on the line as long as I can. For the next hour, Natalie stayed on the phone while I tried to make myself look presentable. I could hear her car in the background, the sound of the highway, occasionally her cursing at slow traffic. She kept talking to me, keeping me calm, reminding me to breathe. The makeup couldn't hide the damage. No amount of concealer could cover the dark purple spreading across my eye. The swelling made my face look lopsided. The cut above my eyebrow kept bleeding through the foundation. I looked exactly like what I was, a woman who had been beaten. They're going to see it, I told Natalie. Everyone's going to see it. Good, she said fiercely. Let them see what he did to you. Let them all see. Brandon knocked on the bathroom door, making me jump. Grace, we're leaving in 10 minutes. Are you ready? Yes, I called out, my voice steadier than I felt. You better not have any makeup running down your face, and don't you dare tell anyone what really happened. Remember what I said. I waited until I heard his footsteps going back downstairs. Did you hear that? I whispered to Natalie. I heard it. I'm recording everything you tell me. Keep your phone in your pocket at the dinner if you can. Try to record his voice. She paused. Grace, I'm so sorry. I should have made you leave years ago. I should have. This isn't your fault, I interrupted. I made my choices. I stayed when I should have left. I kept hoping he'd change back into the person I married. He was never that person, Natalie said quietly. That was a mask. This is who he really is. I knew she was right. Deep down, I'd known for years. I'd just been too scared to admit it. I have to go, I said. He's calling me again. I'm 2 hours away now. I'll be there soon. Be brave, Gracie. I love you. I love you too. I hung up and looked at myself one last time. The woman in the mirror looked broken and terrified, but somewhere underneath all that fear, I felt something else stirring. Anger. Real anger that I'd been pushing down for 10 years. The drive to the restaurant felt like riding in a car with strangers. Brandon sat in the driver's seat, not looking at me, not speaking. Veronica and Candace were in the back seat taking selfies and giggling. Every few minutes, one of them would make a comment. Wow, Grace, that's quite a shiner you've got there, Candace said with fake sympathy. You really should be more careful around furniture. Maybe she'll finally learn to watch where she's going, Veronica added, and they both burst into laughter. Brandon glanced at me. His eyes went to my face, taking in the damage his sisters had done. For just a second, I thought I saw something, regret maybe or shame. But then it was gone, replaced by that cold indifference. Remember what we talked about, he said. You tell everyone you had an accident. You were rushing around getting ready and you fell. That's the story, stick to it. I didn't answer. I just stared out the window, watching the buildings go by, feeling my phone heavy in my pocket. 2 hours. I just had to survive 2 more hours until Natalie got there. When we pulled up to the restaurant, I could see the private dining room through the windows. It was beautiful, decorated with flowers and candles. People were already arriving, dressed in elegant clothes, holding champagne glasses. They all looked so happy, so normal. They had no idea what they were about to witness. Brandon came around to open my door, playing the role of the loving husband. He took my arm to help me out of the car, and his grip was too tight, his fingers digging into my skin. A warning. Smile, he whispered in my ear. And remember, one wrong word, and you'll regret it. Veronica and Candace flanked us as we walked toward the entrance. They were like bodyguards, making sure I didn't run, making sure I played my part. The restaurant manager greeted us warmly, leading us toward the private dining room. I could hear voices and laughter from inside. My parents were probably already there, Brandon's business partners. All these people who thought they were celebrating a happy marriage. Brandon paused at the entrance. He positioned me right in the doorway where everyone would see us when we walked in. He wanted to make an entrance. He always loved being the center of attention. "Ready?" he asked, like we were about to walk into a party and not my public humiliation. I wasn't ready. I would never be ready for this. But I nodded anyway, because what choice did I have? Brandon pushed open the door and we stepped into the dining room together. His arm was around my shoulders, pulling me close to his side. The effect was immediate. Conversation stopped mid-sentence. Champagne glasses froze in the air. Every single person turned to look at us, and I watched their expressions change from joy to confusion to absolute horror. They were staring at my face, at my swollen purple eye, at the cut above my eyebrow, at the bruising on my cheek. Some people gasped, others put their hands over their mouths. My mother made a sound like a wounded animal. The room went completely silent. You could have heard a pin drop. Brandon's arm tightened around my shoulders. He was smiling, actually smiling, like there was nothing wrong with any of this. Then he spoke, his voice carrying across the silent room. "I know what you're all thinking. My beautiful wife had a little accident." He paused, and I felt him look down at me with that satisfied smile. "Actually, it was my sister's. They taught her some respect." Veronica and Candace stepped forward from behind us. They were laughing, actually laughing, raising their champagne glasses like they were making a toast. Like they'd accomplished something to be proud of. The room stayed frozen in horrified silence. Nobody moved, nobody spoke. They just stared at us like we were monsters. That's when I heard it. The sound of the door behind us slamming open so hard it hit the wall. Everyone turned to look at who had just burst into the room. And there was Natalie. My twin sister stood in the doorway like an avenging angel. Her hair was wild from driving with the windows down, her jeans and leather jacket completely out of place among all the elegant dinner clothes, but it was her eyes that made everyone take a step back. They were blazing with a fury I'd never seen before, not even when we were kids fighting on the playground. For a moment, nobody moved. The room was so quiet I could hear my own heartbeat pounding in my ears. People looked from Natalie to me and back again, confused by seeing two identical faces, except one was beaten and broken and the other looked ready to burn the whole world down. My mother gasped, "Natalie." My father stood up from his seat, his face a mixture of relief and worry. He knew what was about to happen. He'd seen Natalie like this before, years ago when a kid at school had bullied me. She'd given that kid a black eye and 2 weeks of detention. She was 12 years old then. Now she was 32, trained in kickboxing, and absolutely terrifying. Brandon's arm loosened around my shoulders. I felt him tense beside me. "Natalie," he said, trying to sound calm and in control. "This is a private family celebration. You weren't invited." Natalie didn't even acknowledge he'd spoken. She walked straight toward us, her boots loud on the hardwood floor. Every step was deliberate, powerful. She moved like a fighter entering a ring, and everyone in the room seemed to sense it. People were backing away, clearing a path. She stopped right in front of us. Her eyes went to my face, taking in every detail of the damage. I saw her jaw clench, saw her hands curl into fists at her sides. Then she looked at Brandon, and the expression on her face made him actually take a step backward. "You let your sisters beat my twin," she said. Her voice was quiet, but it carried through the entire room. "You let them hurt her. And then you brought her here to show everyone what you did, to humiliate her." "Now wait just a minute," Brandon started, but Natalie cut him off. "I'm not talking to you yet." She turned to face Veronica, who was still standing there with her champagne glass, her smile faltering. You slapped my sister, didn't you? Veronica's eyes darted to Brandon, looking for help. I don't know what Grace told you, but don't lie to me. Natalie moved closer to Veronica. This entire room just heard Brandon admit it. You taught Grace respect. Those were his exact words. So let me ask you again. You slapped her. Hard enough to leave a mark, didn't you? The silence stretched out. Veronica's face was turning red. She needed to learn. That's all she got out before Natalie's hand flew across her face with a crack that echoed through the room. The slap was so fast, so precise, that half the people didn't even see it happen. They just heard the sound and saw Veronica stumble backward, dropping her champagne glass. It shattered on the floor, the sound sharp in the silence. Veronica's hand flew to her cheek, her eyes wide with shock. "You hit me!" she screamed. "You can't—" "I just did." Natalie's voice was ice cold. "That's exactly what you did to Grace. Now you know what it feels like." Candace let out a sound of rage and charged at Natalie. She came at her with her arms outstretched, trying to shove or grab or hurt her somehow. But Natalie had been training people in self-defense for 8 years. She'd spent thousands of hours in gyms teaching women how to protect themselves from attackers. Candace never stood a chance. Natalie sidestepped smoothly, like a dancer avoiding a clumsy partner. She used Candace's own momentum against her, guiding her forward with just a touch to her shoulder. Candace's hip hit the edge of the buffet table, the same way I'd hit the coffee table, and she went down hard. She hit the floor with a thud, and when she looked up, there was blood trickling from above her eyebrow. The exact same spot where I'd been cut. Her eye was already starting to swell, the skin around it turning red and then purple. Candace touched her face and her fingers came away bloody. She started crying, loud gasping sobs. "She attacked me! Everyone saw it! She attacked me!" The room erupted. People were shouting, some moving forward, others backing away. Brandon's business partners looked horrified. His parents were trying to get to their daughters. My parents were trying to get to me. But Natalie wasn't done. She turned to Brandon, who had gone pale. He looked around the room desperately, trying to find allies, trying to regain control of the situation. "Someone call the police," he shouted. "She just assaulted my sisters. Everyone here is a witness." Natalie pulled out her phone. She held it up high so everyone could see. "I've been recording since I walked in. This entire room heard you admit that your sisters beat Grace. They heard Veronica and Candace laughing about it, and everyone just watched as Candace charged at me first." She turned in a slow circle, making eye contact with people around the room. "Every single person here is a witness to what you did to my sister. You brought her to this dinner with a black eye and bruises. You announced to 50 people that your sisters attacked her to teach her respect, and you were proud of it." Brandon's face was turning red. "That's not... You're twisting. Grace fell. She had an accident." "Did she?" Natalie's voice got louder. "Is that what happened, Brandon? Because 2 minutes ago you told everyone your sisters taught her respect. You can't have it both ways." Brandon lunged at Natalie. I screamed without meaning to, but Natalie was ready. She turned to face him head-on, her stance wide and balanced. The look in her eyes made him freeze mid-step. "Touch me," she said quietly, "and I will put you on the floor, like I did your sister. And unlike you, I fight fair. No ambushing, no ganging up 3 against 1, just you and me. You want to try?" Brandon's hands were shaking, with rage or fear I couldn't tell. "You came into our anniversary dinner and attacked my family." "No." Natalie's voice cut through his words like a knife. "You attacked Grace. You let your sisters beat her in her own home. You brought her here to parade your control over her. You wanted everyone to see that you broke her, that she belongs to you, that she's so scared she'll stand there with a black eye and not say a word against you." She stepped closer to him. "But here's what you didn't count on. You didn't count on me. You spent 10 years keeping Grace away from me because you knew I'd never let this happen. You knew I'd protect her. And that's exactly what I just did. Natalie turned to address the whole room. Her voice was strong and clear. Everyone here heard Brandon admit his sisters attacked Grace. You all saw them laughing about it. What you just witnessed was me defending my twin sister from her abusers. These two, she gestured at Veronica and Candace, confessed to assault. They were proud of it. They thought there would be no consequences. She looked back at Brandon. Well, here are the consequences. Veronica was still on the floor, holding her red, swollen cheek, crying. Candace was next to her, blood running down from her eyebrow, her eyes swelling shut. They looked exactly like they'd made me look, like victims of violence, like people who'd been hurt. How does it feel? Natalie asked them. How does it feel to be on the receiving end? To know what it's like to be hit, to be powerless, to hurt? Neither of them answered. They just cried harder. Brandon's parents finally pushed through the crowd. His mother was horrified, looking at her daughters on the floor. His father's face was red with anger. What have you done? He demanded, looking at Natalie. You'll be arrested for this. Will I? Natalie pulled out her phone again. Because I have a recording of your son admitting his daughters attacked Grace first. I have video of Candace charging at me. I have 50 witnesses who heard everything. So let's call the police right now. Let's see who gets arrested. Brandon's father opened his mouth, then closed it. He looked at his son, and I saw something change in his expression. Maybe understanding, maybe disgust, maybe just the realization that this was indefensible. Natalie finally walked over to me. She gently touched my face, examining my injuries up close. Tears were streaming down my cheeks. I hadn't even realized I was crying. I'm so sorry I didn't get here sooner, she whispered, but I'm here now, and we're leaving. You're not taking her anywhere, Brandon said, but his voice was weak now, uncertain. Natalie turned to him one last time. Watch me. She put her arm around my shoulders, gentle, protective, nothing like Brandon's controlling grip. She started leading me toward the door. Brandon moved to block our path. Grace is my wife. She's not going anywhere with you. That's when my father stepped forward, my quiet, gentle father who'd spent his whole life avoiding conflict. He positioned himself between Brandon and us, and when he spoke, his voice was steady and cold. If you touch either of my daughters, he said, you'll have to go through me first. And son, I may be old, but I promise you don't want that fight. Then he pulled an envelope from his jacket pocket and handed it to Natalie. What is this? She asked. Evidence, my father said, not taking his eyes off Brandon. 2 years' worth? Recordings, photographs, testimony from neighbours. Everything I could document about what he's been doing to Grace. My mother appeared beside him. We've been building a case, she said quietly. Waiting for the right moment, waiting for Grace to be ready. I stared at my parents in shock. They'd known. They'd been watching. They'd been preparing to help me this whole time. Mum. Dad. I started, but my mother just hugged me carefully, avoiding my injuries. We're so sorry we waited so long, she said, but you're safe now. We're taking you home. Natalie looked at Brandon one final time. This marriage is over. Grace is coming with us. And if you or your sisters come near her again, what happened tonight will seem gentle. Do you understand me? Brandon just stood there, frozen, as we walked past him toward the door. Behind us, the room was chaos. People arguing, Veronica and Candace still crying on the floor, Brandon's parents trying to understand what had just happened. But I didn't look back. For the first time in 10 years, I walked away from Brandon with my head up. Because my sister was beside me, my parents were behind me, and I wasn't alone anymore. We sat in Natalie's car in the parking lot for what felt like hours but was probably only 10 minutes. I couldn't stop shaking. My whole body was trembling like I'd been dropped in ice water. Natalie kept her arms wrapped around me while I cried, really cried, for the first time in years. Not quiet tears that I had to hide, loud, gasping sobs that hurt my chest. Why did you do that? I finally asked when I could speak again. Why did you hit them back? Natalie pulled away just enough to look me in the eyes. Because I've spent 8 years teaching women how to defend themselves. I've watched hundreds of abuse victims come through my gym, learning to fight back, learning they're not powerless. And the whole time, my own sister was being hurt and I couldn't stop it. I couldn't make you leave. I couldn't protect you. She wiped tears from her own cheeks. So when I walked in there and saw what they did to your face, saw them laughing about it like it was funny, something in me just snapped. They needed to understand what they did. They needed to feel it. Words weren't going to work with people like that. The only language bullies really understand is their own. But you could get in trouble. They could press charges. Let them try. Natalie's voice was fierce. Brandon admitted in front of 50 witnesses that his sisters attacked you first. I was defending you from confessed attackers. My lawyer will eat them alive. My parents tapped on the car window. Dad was holding his jacket over Mom's shoulders because the night had gotten cold. Natalie rolled down the window. We should go, Dad said. People are starting to leave the restaurant. We don't want to be here when Brandon comes out. Come to our house, Mom added. Both of you. Tonight and for as long as Grace needs. We drove in a caravan, Natalie's car following my parents' car, through streets I'd driven down 1,000 times. But everything looked different now. The world felt different. I felt different. Inside my parents' house, the house I grew up in, Mom made tea while Dad set up the guest room. Natalie sat beside me on the couch, holding my hand like we were kids again. Like we used to do during thunderstorms when we were scared. What happens now? I asked. Dad came back downstairs with the thick envelope he'd given Natalie. He spread the contents across the coffee table, photographs of bruises I thought I'd hidden well, recordings of arguments that neighbours had heard through thin walls, a journal where he'd documented every time I'd cancelled plans, every time I'd lost weight, every time my smile didn't reach my eyes. I knew something was wrong 2 years ago, Dad said. Your mother and I both did. But you kept saying everything was fine. You kept defending him. So we started documenting everything, building a case for when you were ready to leave. Mom sat down with the tea. We talked to a lawyer 6 months ago. She said we had enough for a restraining order and a strong divorce case. We were just waiting for you. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. You did all this? For me? You're our daughter, Mum said simply. Of course we did. Over the next few hours, they laid out a plan. Tomorrow, we'd file for a restraining order against Brandon, Veronica, and Candace. We'd file assault charges against the sisters. We'd start divorce proceedings with a lawyer who specialised in abuse cases. We'd get me somewhere safe where Brandon couldn't find me. My phone wouldn't stop buzzing. Brandon had called 47 times. His messages went from angry to desperate to threatening. Natalie finally just turned my phone off. You don't owe him anything, she said. Not an explanation, not a conversation, nothing. That night, I couldn't sleep. I kept replaying everything in my mind. The look on Veronica's face when Natalie slapped her. The sound of Candace hitting the floor. The way Brandon's confidence had crumbled when he realised he'd lost control. Natalie came into the guest room around 2 in the morning and climbed into bed next to me, just like when we were little and one of us had a nightmare. Do you think I'm a bad person? I whispered, for feeling glad that they got hurt. For wanting them to feel what I felt? Natalie was quiet for a moment. I think you're human. They hurt you for years and faced no consequences. Tonight they finally understood what their victim felt. That doesn't make you bad. It makes you honest. People are going to say revenge is wrong. That violence is never the answer. Those people have probably never been cornered in their own home by 3 people who want to hurt them. They've never spent 10 years being slowly destroyed by someone who promised to love them. Natalie turned to face me in the dark. You tried everything else, Grace. You tried being kind. You tried being patient. You tried changing yourself to make him happy. None of it worked. Sometimes the only thing that stops a bully is facing their own cruelty. The next few weeks were a blur. The restraining orders were approved immediately. The judge took one look at the photographs of my face and the recording of Brandon's confession and didn't hesitate. Veronica and Candace were charged with assault. They tried to claim self-defense, but too many witnesses had heard them bragging about teaching me respect. Brandon tried to fight the divorce, but his own words at the anniversary dinner destroyed any defense he could make. His lawyer advised him to settle. He lost a significant portion of our assets because of the documented abuse. His business reputation was ruined. Several of his partners who'd been at the dinner quietly ended their relationships with him. The local news picked up the story. Anniversary dinner turns into assault confession, read one headline. Brandon's family tried to control the narrative, but too many people had been there. Too many people had heard everything. Veronica and Candace both ended up pleading guilty to avoid trial. They got probation, community service, and mandatory anger management classes. The judge also ordered them to stay at least 500 feet away from me at all times. I heard through mutual friends that Brandon had become a pariah in his social circles. His own parents had distanced themselves from him, embarrassed by what their son had done. His sisters blamed him for everything, saying he'd encouraged their behavior toward me for years. 6 months later, I was sitting in a small apartment near Natalie's place, looking healthier than I had in years. I'd gained back the weight I'd lost. The hollow look in my eyes was gone. I'd started teaching again at a school near my parents'. I'd even joined Natalie's self-defense classes. At first, I'd been terrified to learn how to fight, but Natalie explained it wasn't about violence. It was about knowing you could protect yourself, about never being helpless again. I was painting again too, something I'd given up during my marriage because Brandon said it was a waste of time. The canvas in front of me showed two women who looked identical but stood differently. One was crouched low, hurt and scared. The other stood tall, protective and strong. I titled it Twin Flames. Natalie came home with Chinese food and we ate straight from the containers, sitting on the floor like college students. I got a message today, I said, from a woman named Jennifer. She was at the anniversary dinner. She's leaving her husband. Because of what happened. I nodded. She said watching me stand there with that black eye and then watching you defend me made her realize she didn't have to accept being hurt anymore. She asked if I could talk to her, help her through it. Natalie smiled. Are you going to? Yeah, I think I am. I looked at the painting, at the two versions of myself. I spent 10 years being the scared one, the hurt one. Maybe it's time to be the strong one for someone else. My phone buzzed with a text from Jennifer. She was asking about restraining orders, about lawyers, about how to leave safely. I typed back a long response, offering to meet her, to help however I could. As I hit send, I thought about something Natalie had said that night in the car, about how bullies only understand their own language. People had been horrified by what Natalie did, slapping Veronica, letting Candace fall the same way I'd fallen. They called it revenge, they called it wrong. But those same people had been ready to ignore my black eye, to accept Brandon's explanation of an accident, to let Veronica and Candace laugh about teaching me respect without any consequences. The truth was, nothing else would have worked. Brandon would have spun some story about me being clumsy. His sisters would have denied everything. I would have gone home with him that night, and the abuse would have continued, maybe gotten worse. What Natalie did was extreme. It was shocking. It made people uncomfortable, but it also made them pay attention. It made them witnesses to something they couldn't ignore or explain away, and it gave me the opening I needed to escape. I stood up and walked to the window, looking out at the city lights. Somewhere out there, Brandon was living with the consequences of his actions. His sisters were living with theirs, and I was here, free, healing, helping another woman find her own freedom. Do you have any regrets? Natalie asked from behind me. About how it all ended? I thought about it carefully. About the violence, about the public humiliation, about watching Veronica and Candace hurt the same way they'd hurt me. No, I said finally. People say I should feel guilty, that I should wish it had ended differently, more peacefully. But those people weren't married to Brandon for 10 years. They didn't feel his control tightening around them like a noose. They didn't spend a decade being torn down piece by piece. I turned to face my sister. You gave them one moment of understanding what their victim felt. One moment of consequences. That's not revenge, that's justice. Natalie stood up and hugged me. I love you, Gracie. I love you too. Thank you for coming when I called. Thank you for fighting for me when I couldn't fight for myself. Always, she whispered. That's what sisters do. Later that night, alone in my room, I looked at myself in the mirror. The bruises were long gone. My eye had healed. But the person looking back at me was different from the woman I'd been 6 months ago. I was stronger, freer, more myself than I'd been in a decade. Some people might judge how my marriage ended. They might say violence is never justified, that Natalie should have called the police instead, that revenge makes you as bad as your abuser. But those people have never been where I was. They've never felt so trapped, so powerless, so completely broken that they couldn't see a way out. Sometimes people need to face their own cruelty to understand it. Sometimes the only thing that breaks through to a bully is becoming their victim, even if just for a moment. And sometimes the bravest thing you can do is let someone fight for you when you can't fight for yourself. I picked up my phone and texted Jennifer back. Tomorrow at 2. Coffee shop on Main Street. You're not alone anymore? I promise. Then I turned off the light and went to sleep in my own bed, in my own apartment, with no one controlling when I came or went or who I talked to. I was free, and I was never going back.